Meet Jasmine, a 25-year-old single mom fighting to survive in a system stacked against her. This is her story of struggle, resilience, and hope in the face of overwhelming odds. If you believe in the power of strength and courage, hit that subscribe button and join us on this journey. Jasmine wiped the sweat from her brow as the afternoon sun beat through the cracked window of her small apartment. The sound of her daughter's laughter echoed from the tiny living room, a fragile reminder of why she kept pushing forward. 3 years old, full of life, completely unaware of the battles her mother faced every day. She glanced at the clock, 2:15 p.m. In 45 minutes, she had to leave for her second job of the day, the diner downtown, where the shifts never ended and tips barely added up. Before that, she'd been at the warehouse since 6 a.m., sorting packages for minimum wage. And after the diner? A late-night cleaning gig at an office building, which paid just enough to cover a few bills. Jasmine was exhausted, bone-deep tired. But there was no quitting. Not when little Amara needed her. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister, Maya. "You holding up okay? Call me tonight." Jasmine smiled faintly, typing back, "Trying. Will do." The truth was, she was barely holding on. Jasmine's life was a tightrope stretched over a canyon of bills, childcare struggles, and endless exhaustion. The father of Amara had vanished long ago, leaving her to figure it all out alone. She glanced at the pile of unopened mail on the kitchen counter, overdue notices, utility bills, and a reminder about a doctor's appointment for Amara. Healthcare wasn't cheap, but she knew she couldn't risk ignoring it. Not after last winter's scare when Amara caught the flu and almost ended up hospitalized. Her tiny apartment smelled faintly of bleach and last night's burnt dinner. Amara's favorite stuffed bunny lay abandoned on the floor, a silent witness to the chaos of Jasmine's life. "Mommy," Amara called, holding up a crayon drawing proudly. Jasmine's heart ached with love and guilt all at once. "I love it, baby," Jasmine said, sweeping Amara into a quick hug before pulling on her worn-out jacket. The clock was ticking. The day wouldn't wait. Outside, the city buzzed with indifferent noise. Jasmine was just another face in the crowd, a woman fighting invisible battles with no one to lean on. And tomorrow, it would all start again. The dawn broke over the city with a chilly breeze cutting through the streets. Jasmine's alarm buzzed relentlessly at 5 a.m., dragging her from a restless sleep. She lay there for a moment, eyes heavy, mind racing through the endless to-do list of the day ahead. Today was no different. Warehouse shift at 6, diner shift at 2, cleaning at 9. Her body screamed for rest, but there was no time. Amara stirred beside her, soft whimpers pulling Jasmine from the fog of tiredness. The little girl's brown curls framed a sleepy face, eyes fluttering open slowly. Jasmine kissed her forehead gently. "Good morning, my love," she whispered, voice rough from sleep. The apartment was still dim, the faint hum of the city outside the only sound. Jasmine dressed quietly, trying not to wake Amara fully. She prepared a simple breakfast, cold cereal and some orange juice, and sat at the small kitchen table, watching her daughter eat with unguarded joy. Despite everything, moments like these were precious. But the clock was a merciless tyrant. By 6 a.m. sharp, Jasmine had to be out the door for the warehouse. Amara's daycare didn't open until 7:30, and her sister Maya, who occasionally helped, was already at work. Jasmine felt the familiar tightening in her chest, how to keep Amara safe and cared for while juggling impossible schedules. Her phone vibrated. A message from her boss. "Need you to stay late today. Big shipment. No way to say no." Jasmine sighed. She packed a small bag with toys and snacks for Amara, then called Maya. "Can you watch her until I get back?" "Sorry, Jay. I'm swamped today," came the quick reply. Her heart sank. Left with no other option, Jasmine arranged for a neighbor to check in on Amara, Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman with kind eyes but limited mobility. Jasmine hoped she could manage. The warehouse was cold and noisy. Jasmine moved mechanically, scanning packages, loading boxes, while her mind raced back to Amara. Was she okay? Was she lonely? Was she safe? Hours passed in a blur of exhaustion. At 1:30 p.m., Jasmine rushed out of the warehouse, barely catching the bus to the diner. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Patterson. "Amara is playing nicely." All good. Relief washed over Jasmine, but the day was far from over. The diner was crowded. Orders flew fast, customers complained, tips were low. Jasmine's hands trembled from fatigue, but she forced a smile. Amara's laughter that morning kept her going. Then, during a rare quiet moment, Jasmine felt her phone vibrate again. A text from daycare. "Emergency, please call us immediately." Panic slammed into her chest. Jasmine's heart pounded as she called the number back. The voice on the other end was rushed, tense. "Mrs. Thompson? Your daughter, Amara, has been found with some pills. We don't know how many she swallowed. The paramedics are on their way." Jasmine's world tilted. "No, no, no," she whispered, barely able to breathe. "I'm on my way." She left the diner without saying a word, sprinting to the bus stop, her mind spiraling with fear and guilt. How had this happened? How could she have been so careless? As the bus crawled through traffic, every second felt like an eternity. Jasmine called Maya, voice shaking. "I'm going to the hospital." Amara swallowed some pills. Maya's voice was firm but gentle. "I'm coming. Stay calm, Jay." The hospital waiting room was cold and sterile. Jasmine paced, tears streaming silently. The faces of exhausted mothers, frustrated nurses, and indifferent doctors blurred around her. Time slowed. After what felt like hours, a nurse appeared. "Amara is stable. The pills were caught in time. She's going to be okay." Jasmine collapsed into a chair, relief mingled with exhaustion. But then came the cold reminder of reality, the bill. The hospital clerk handed her an envelope. Jasmine's hands trembled as she opened it. $3,000. Her breath caught in her throat. $3,000 to save her child. Money she didn't have. The weight of the system crashed down on her, heavier than any exhaustion. The hospital corridors smelled of antiseptic and fear. Jasmine sat motionless in the stiff plastic chair, clutching the crumpled bill in her hands like a cruel joke. $3,000. $3,000. That number echoed through her mind, louder than the beep of the machines or the muffled conversations around her. Her phone lay on the table, buzzing softly. Maya's message blinked on the screen. "We'll figure this out. Together." But the warmth in those words barely touched the cold reality that pressed down on Jasmine's chest. She was a mother, a fighter, but now a debtor. A woman trapped in a system designed to punish the most vulnerable. The hours that followed blurred into a haze. Calls to the hospital billing department went unanswered or ended with cold reminders of payment deadlines. The insurance company, a confusing maze of automated messages, denied most of her claims, citing lack of coverage or pre-existing conditions. The few representatives who did answer were sympathetic but helpless. "How am I supposed to pay this?" Jasmine whispered into the phone during one call, voice cracking. The only answer was silence, or worse, a polite, "We can set up a payment plan." The thought of sinking into debt, of choosing between rent, food, and this monstrous bill, was suffocating. Jasmine's hands trembled as she stared at the pile of unopened envelopes on the kitchen table, each one a reminder of what she owed. That night, after putting Amara to bed, Jasmine sat on the floor of her tiny living room, her back against the peeling wallpaper. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint sounds of the city outside and the soft breathing of her sleeping daughter. She pulled out an old photo from her wallet, a picture of her and Amara at the park last summer. The smiles frozen in time felt distant now. Tears slipped down Jasmine's cheeks. Exhaustion was no longer just physical, it was a crushing weight on her spirit. But even in this dark moment, a spark flickered inside her. For Amara. For the promise she made when she held her daughter for the first time, to never give up. Jasmine picked up her phone and searched for local community support groups, charities, and health advocacy organizations. The internet was a confusing tangle of resources, most requiring paperwork, proof of income, or long wait times. Days passed in a relentless loop of work, worry, and whispered prayers. At the diner, customers chatted about their weekends, their plans, oblivious to the battles fought quietly behind the counter. Jasmine smiled politely, but inside, she felt like she was drowning. One evening, Maya stopped by after her shift. They sat together at the kitchen table, cups of cheap coffee steaming between them. "I called a few places," Maya said, voice steady. "There's a clinic that helps with medical bills for people like you. It's a long shot, but it's something." Jasmine nodded, grateful for the lifeline, but afraid of false hope. The next day, she filled out endless forms, printed pay stubs, and gathered every document she could find. Each signature, each box checked, was a small battle won, but the war was far from over. Weeks later, Jasmine received a letter. A partial reduction of the bill, $1,800 instead of $3,000. It was less than she hoped, but it was a start. She took a deep breath. Every dollar mattered. At work, exhaustion clawed at her muscles and mind. The late nights at the office cleaning job left her with barely enough energy to hold Amara in the mornings. But Jasmine pushed through, fueled by sheer will. One night, as she tucked Amara into bed, her daughter reached up and whispered, "Mommy, I love you." Jasmine smiled through tears, her heart aching with fierce love and determination. The fight wasn't over, but she was not alone. The sun had barely risen, casting a pale light through the thin curtains of Jasmine's apartment. She sat at the kitchen table, fingers wrapped tightly around a chipped mug of lukewarm coffee. The early morning quiet was her only companion. Amara was still asleep in her small crib, peaceful and innocent, a sharp contrast to the storm brewing inside Jasmine's heart. The partial reduction on the hospital bill brought a glimmer of hope, but it barely scratched the surface of the crushing debt. Jasmine knew she had to find a way to pay the $1,800 or risk losing everything. The rent was overdue. The electricity bill was threatening to be cut off. The grocery store shelves were almost empty. Jasmine stared at the numbers on her phone's calculator, running through every possible budget scenario. Every dollar was accounted for, every expense squeezed until nothing more could be cut. Her phone buzzed again, another text from Maya. "Don't forget to breathe. We'll get through this." Jasmine closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and tried to hold on to that fragile thread of hope. Later that morning, she got ready for her second job at the diner. The uniform felt heavy on her skin, the name tag a constant reminder of how little she was seen beyond the surface. The diner was buzzing with regulars chatting loudly over coffee and greasy breakfast plates. Jasmine greeted customers with a practiced smile, masking the exhaustion and worry beneath. At one table, a group of young women laughed, their carefree voices stabbing at Jasmine's fragile calm. She felt the sting of invisibility, a woman worn thin by life's relentless demands, unnoticed and unvalued. During a rare lull, Jasmine stepped outside to take a breath. The cold air hit her face, sharp and biting. She closed her eyes, wishing for a moment's peace. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from the clinic Maya had found. A social worker wanted to meet with her to discuss additional support. Jasmine's heart lifted for the first time in days. The meeting was scheduled for the following afternoon. In the cramped office of the community clinic, Jasmine sat across from Marlene, a social worker with kind eyes and a calm voice. The walls were adorned with posters about healthcare rights and local resources. "We're here to help," Marlene said, flipping through Jasmine's paperwork. "You're not alone in this. Many single mothers face similar struggles. Let's see what we can do." Jasmine felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but relief. Finally, someone was listening. Marlene outlined programs for medical bill assistance, food stamps, and childcare subsidies. She also mentioned local groups for single parents, where Jasmine could find emotional support. For the first time in weeks, Jasmine felt a spark of possibility. But Marlene was honest about the challenges ahead. Many of these programs take time, and the bureaucracy can be frustrating. But we'll take it one step at a time. Jasmine nodded, determination settling in her chest. Back home, she told Maya about the meeting, her voice trembling but hopeful. Maya smiled, squeezing her hand. "You're stronger than you know, Jay." That night, Jasmine sat by Amara's bedside, watching her sleep. The weight of the debt was still there, looming over them like a storm cloud. But the promise of support made the darkness a little less suffocating. She whispered a silent prayer, not just for her daughter's health, but for the strength to keep fighting. The following weeks passed in a blur of exhaustion and hope. Jasmine juggled her 3 jobs with the help of Maya and the support programs Marlene had connected her to. But the cracks beneath the surface of her life were widening. Her body ached constantly, a dull throb from sleepless nights and relentless stress. At work, her manager's patience was wearing thin. "You're late again," he snapped one evening at the diner, his tone sharp. "If you don't keep up, we'll have to let you go." Jasmine swallowed the sting of his words and nodded, apologizing softly. She knew losing any job could be a disaster. At home, Amara's health was stable, but the little girl seemed to sense her mother's tension. Some nights, Amara woke crying, and Jasmine felt too drained to comfort her properly. Maya noticed the toll it was taking. "You can't keep going like this," she said gently during one of her visits. "You need to rest." Jasmine shook her head. "If I stop, we lose everything." One afternoon, after a long shift at the warehouse, Jasmine felt dizzy while walking home. Her legs buckled, and she caught herself on the doorframe. She sat down hard, heart pounding. The weight of it all, the bills, the exhaustion, the endless fight, pressed down until it was almost unbearable. She wanted to scream, to cry, to give up. But then she looked at Amara's drawing taped to the fridge, bright colors, messy lines, a mother and daughter holding hands. A small beacon in the chaos. Jasmine took a deep breath and stood up. She had to keep going. The next day, she met with Marlene again to discuss a new challenge, the threat of eviction. The landlord had sent notices, impatient for the overdue rent. Jasmine, you may qualify for emergency housing assistance, Marlene explained, handing her brochures. We'll help you apply, but it won't be quick. Jasmine's stomach twisted. The thought of losing their home was terrifying. At the diner, a new customer caught her attention, a middle-aged woman who seemed kind but asked pointed questions about Jasmine's life. Jasmine was wary but polite. Later, Maya warned her. Be careful who you trust, Jay. Not everyone wants to help. Jasmine nodded, grateful for her sister's protectiveness. One evening, after Amara was asleep, Jasmine sat down with her laptop, filling out applications for assistance programs, her eyes burning with fatigue. She was fighting a war on multiple fronts: poverty, exhaustion, and an unforgiving system. Yet, somewhere deep inside, a fierce hope remained. The night had settled heavily over the city when Jasmine finally closed her laptop. Her fingers ached from endless typing, the relentless filling out of forms, and the desperate search for any glimmer of help. Yet tonight felt different, a flicker of hope amid the dark fatigue. Her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from the woman she met briefly at the diner a week ago, Linda. I can help. Let's meet. Jasmine hesitated. Maya's warning echoed sharply in her mind. Be careful who you trust. But desperation clawed at her throat. The weight of bills, eviction threats, and exhaustion made her grasp for any lifeline. The next day, she found herself walking toward the small cafe near her apartment. Linda was already there, waiting with a warm, reassuring smile. The kind of smile that could either heal or hide something else. You're doing an amazing job holding it all together, Linda said softly, her voice comforting. She slid a thick folder across the table. This nonprofit helps people like you, fighting medical debt, eviction, and finding support. Jasmine felt a fragile hope stirring, but the words were cautious. What do you need from me? Linda chuckled lightly. Just paperwork, patience, and trust. We can get your bills reduced, maybe even covered. But the system moves slow, and they need proof. Jasmine nodded, biting her lip. She wanted to believe, but years of hardship taught her to guard her heart. Days turned into weeks with Linda's guidance. Applications were filed, calls were made. For the first time in months, Jasmine felt a sliver of relief. Maybe she wasn't fighting alone, but life didn't pause. At the diner, her manager's patience thinned like worn fabric. You missed another shift, he said coldly. We can't keep covering for you. Jasmine's throat tightened. I'm trying, but between work and Amara, I'm stretched too thin. He shook his head. That's not our problem. The words stung, but Jasmine swallowed the pain and smiled politely. Losing her job wasn't an option. Home offered no refuge. One evening, after a long, exhausting day, Jasmine found a folded note slipped under her apartment door. Stop asking for help you don't deserve. No signature. No explanation. Fear blossomed in her chest, icy and sharp. Was it a neighbor? The landlord? Someone from work? Or worse? Maya was furious. You have to report it. This isn't right. But Jasmine shook her head. I don't want to make things worse. I'm already barely holding on. That night, Amara stirred in her crib, tears streaking down her small cheeks. Jasmine held her close, whispering soothing words, even as her own heart trembled. Mommy's here, she whispered. Always. The days blurred, each one a relentless battle. Sometimes, Jasmine found herself staring out the window, the city lights shimmering like distant stars she couldn't reach. But in those moments, she reminded herself why she fought, for Amara's future, for a chance at something better. One afternoon, Linda called with news. Some of the medical debt might be forgiven through the nonprofit's connections. The relief was electric, but fragile. Don't celebrate yet, Linda warned. There's more paperwork, and the landlord still expects rent. Jasmine smiled faintly, gratitude and exhaustion mingling. Maya helped with childcare so Jasmine could rest a little more. They talked late into the night about dreams and fears, the pain of watching the system fail them. Despite everything, Jasmine's spirit flickered stubbornly. She refused to let the darkness swallow her. In the quiet moments before dawn, she held Amara tightly, whispering promises she hoped she could keep. I'll never stop fighting, baby. For you. The dawn was just breaking when Jasmine woke to the sound of a loud knock on her door. Her heart jumped, a sudden jolt that sent a ripple of anxiety through her. It was too early for visitors, too soon for anything good. She wrapped Amara in a soft blanket and moved cautiously to the door, peeking through the peephole. Outside stood two men in uniforms, eviction officers. Jasmine's breath caught in her throat. The landlord hadn't given them the extra time Marlene promised. "Miss Harris," one of them asked, his voice firm but not unkind. "We're here to serve an eviction notice." The paper in his hand felt heavier than it looked. Jasmine's world seemed to tilt. "Please," she whispered, voice breaking. "I'm trying to find help. I have applications in progress." "We understand," the other officer said, "but this is a legal order. You have 24 hours. Jasmine felt numb, the walls closing in around her. She clutched Amara tightly and sank to the floor. When Maya arrived later, her eyes were fierce with anger and worry. "This is a nightmare," she said, helping her sister gather their few belongings. Jasmine packed methodically, trying to stay calm for Amara's sake. Every move was heavy with loss, the familiar walls, the tiny kitchen, the dream she'd barely dared to hope for. They found temporary shelter at a women's shelter downtown. It was crowded and noisy, but at least it was safe. Jasmine's phone buzzed constantly, calls from work, the nonprofit, and even Linda, who was doing everything she could to expedite help. One evening, after putting Amara to bed on a thin mattress in the shelter's common room, Jasmine sat with Maya and broke down. "I don't know how much more I can take," she said, tears flowing freely. "I'm exhausted. I'm scared." Maya took her hand. "You're stronger than you think, Jay. And you're not alone." The shelter offered programs, job training, counseling, and childcare support. Slowly, Jasmine began to piece together a fragile new routine. But the emotional scars were deep. The eviction wasn't just a loss of a home. It was a fracture in Jasmine's sense of safety and control. At work, rumors swirled about her situation. Some coworkers whispered, others avoided her. The diner's manager watched her like a hawk, waiting for a mistake. One night, after a long shift, Jasmine found herself in tears in the staff bathroom. The weight of judgment and exhaustion crushed her. But then she looked at her reflection, tired eyes, but a fierce determination. She wiped her tears, squared her shoulders, and walked back out. Her fight wasn't over. Life at the women's shelter was far from easy. The constant noise, the lack of privacy, and the endless lines for food and showers weighed heavily on Jasmine. But it was also a sanctuary, a place where she and Amara were safe from the threat of homelessness. Jasmine found herself in a small room shared with two other mothers, their children sleeping in cribs and cots. At night, the sounds of whispered prayers, restless babies, and quiet sobs filled the room. It was far from home, but it was shelter. Every day, Jasmine attended the shelter's programs, job workshops, parenting classes, and counseling sessions. She met women from all walks of life, each with their own story of loss and survival. Some had been there for months. Others, like Jasmine, had just arrived, fragile but fiercely determined. One afternoon, during a job readiness workshop, Jasmine listened carefully as a counselor explained how to prepare for interviews, manage finances, and build a resume. The counselor's words gave Jasmine a new kind of hope, a roadmap for rebuilding. But the emotional weight of her situation was hard to shake. At night, she often woke to the memory of eviction officers knocking on her door, the fear in Amara's eyes, and the crushing helplessness she'd felt. Her phone was a lifeline to Linda, who continued to advocate for her with the nonprofit. Slowly, some of the medical debt was being negotiated down, and the nonprofit was exploring emergency rental assistance programs. Despite these small victories, Jasmine knew the road ahead would be long and uncertain. One day, Maya surprised her with a visit, bringing a small gift for Amara, a colorful picture book. They sat together on the narrow bed, reading aloud, laughing softly. For a moment, the harsh realities of life melted away. Maya's presence was a balm for Jasmine's soul. "I'm proud of you," Maya said quietly. "You're fighting every day, and you're not alone." Jasmine smiled, tears brimming. "I just want to give Amara a better life." The shelter offered a childcare program, allowing Jasmine to attend job interviews and shifts without worry. She landed a part-time job at a nearby grocery store, a start. The manager was kind, understanding her situation, and gave her flexible hours. It wasn't enough to pay all the bills, but it was a lifeline. One evening, after Amara was asleep, Jasmine sat by the window, gazing out at the city lights. She thought about the long fight, the pain, and the moments of unexpected kindness. She whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." Jasmine's days were a whirlwind of work, childcare, and navigating the tangled web of assistance programs. Every paycheck was a lifeline, but bills piled up faster than she could pay them. The shadow of debt hung over her like a storm cloud. At the grocery store, she worked hard, learning new tasks quickly, trying to keep her head down and stay professional. Some coworkers offered smiles and quiet support, while others kept their distance. The manager's flexibility was a rare kindness she treasured. Yet, the pressure was relentless. One afternoon, after a long shift, Jasmine arrived at the shelter to find a notice on the door, maintenance work. Water shut off 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. tomorrow. Water was a necessity Jasmine couldn't go without, especially with Amara. That night, she filled containers, boiled water on the small stove, and tried to prepare for the inconvenience. It was another reminder of the fragile line she was walking. Her phone buzzed late one evening with a call from Linda. "Good news," Linda said. "We've secured partial forgiveness on your medical debt. It's not everything, but it's a start." Jasmine exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Thank you," she whispered. The relief was real but tempered by the knowledge that rent, utilities, food, and childcare still loomed large. Maya visited often, sometimes bringing groceries or just sitting quietly with Jasmine and Amara. Their bond was a source of strength. One day, after Amara's nap, Jasmine noticed a brochure for a local community college's evening classes. A spark ignited inside her, a chance to build a better future through education. But how to balance classes, work, childcare, and bills? The question haunted her. One night, after putting Amara to sleep, Jasmine sat at the small table, staring at the brochure, the weight of possibility heavy on her. "I want more," she whispered to herself. "For Amara. For me." Tears came, not from despair, but from a fierce determination to hold on, to keep fighting no matter how hard the world pushed back. The morning light filtered softly through the thin curtains of the shelter room, casting gentle patterns on the worn carpet. Jasmine woke slowly, the familiar weight of exhaustion settling deep in her bones. Yet beneath the fatigue was a flicker of hope, fragile but persistent. Today was the day she'd start community college classes. She dressed quietly, careful not to wake Amara, who lay curled on the small cot beside her, breathing softly in sleep. Jasmine's heart swelled with both love and guilt. She wished she could give her daughter more, a home filled with warmth, not a crowded shelter room. But this was a step forward, and that mattered. At breakfast, the shelter buzzed with morning activity. Mothers and children moved through the cramped kitchen, voices low but full of purpose. Jasmine's friend from the shelter, Tasha, smiled and gave her an encouraging nod. "You got this," she whispered. The community college was a bus ride away. Jasmine sat among a group of young adults, most younger than she was, some with confident smiles, others shy and uncertain like herself. The professor, a kind-faced woman with a calm voice, began the first lecture on the power of education and self-transformation. Jasmine took careful notes, her mind sharp despite the fatigue. Each word stirred something inside her, a belief that her life could change. Meanwhile, Amara was in the shelter's childcare program, cared for by volunteers who treated her gently. Jasmine called during breaks, hearing her daughter's laughter on the other end, a balm to her weary spirit. Balancing classes, work at the grocery store, and caring for Amara was a grueling challenge. Jasmine often stayed up late, poring over homework after Amara was asleep. Sometimes she fell asleep with her head on the kitchen table, only to wake moments before dawn. One evening, Maya came by after work, bringing homemade food and a small gift for Amara, a bright, colorful blanket. "I thought this might keep her warm at the shelter," Maya said, smiling softly. Jasmine hugged her sister tightly, grateful beyond words. "Thanks, Maya. You have no idea how much this means." They ate quietly, sharing stories about the shelter, classes, and work. Maya listened intently, offering encouragement. "Jazz, you're stronger than you know. You're building something solid, even if it doesn't feel like it right now." Jasmine smiled, though tears glistened in her eyes. "I'm scared I'll never get out of this." "You will." Step by step. Weeks passed. Jasmine grew stronger and more confident. She mastered new skills at work, impressed her manager, and earned more hours. The medical debt, once a looming nightmare, shrank as the nonprofit's advocacy bore fruit. The letter confirming a 70% reduction brought relief she hadn't dared hope for. One afternoon, a fellow student approached her after class. "You're doing great juggling all this," he said. "I'm Malik. If you ever need study help, just ask." Jasmine felt a rare warmth. For so long, the world had been a cold, indifferent place. Malik's kindness was a light. At the shelter, Jasmine helped new arrivals navigate resources. Her experience made her a quiet leader among the women. They looked to her for advice and comfort, and she found purpose in their shared struggle. One night, after Amara was asleep, Jasmine sat on the shelter's rooftop, gazing at the stars. Maya joined her, handing over 2 steaming cups of tea. Remember when we used to dream about the future? Maya asked. Every day, Jasmine replied. I still dream. But now, I see a path. Maya smiled. You're going to make it. Jasmine took a deep breath, feeling the cold night air fill her lungs. I'm scared, but I'm not giving up. Her phone buzzed, a text from her manager. We'd like to offer you a full-time position starting next month. Let's talk. Jasmine's fingers trembled as she replied. Thank you. I won't let you down. That night, she held Amara close, whispering promises she hoped to keep. We're going to be okay, baby. One step at a time. The fight was far from over, but Jasmine had found something precious, strength, hope, and the will to keep moving forward.